Hello, everyone. Thank you for being awake. So I want to thank Jeanette, Dr. Alfari, and Nicole, wherever you are. Thank you for creating this. I always learn very much from you. The last time I was here, also in University of Santa Barbara, for another one part of this series, I learned so much. And so thank you for everyone who has done so much work in this area, especially that I learned that there is a sexology, what's it, PhD in sexology now in Iran. And I'm glad to hear that, actually, because I would prefer to refer my clients to some place that they can learn versus pornography on the video, so at least somebody can teach them good sex somewhere. So I've been a psychotherapist for about 27 years, and I've had the privilege of working with immigrants who just came, and then watch them through kind of acculturation and assimilation, and especially the Iranians and Iranians from different sects. So what I would like to add to today is what I see when what you guys talked about the culture, about marriage and what you saw and talked about, and then as they come into a Western society and how that kind of changes through the time or keeps being the way it is. And what are some of the issues that gets created in these type of marriages. The type of marriages that happen here in the society, they either come through a family system and a tribal concept, which is, for example, we might have the Iranian Jewish community, which will have its own, or the Iranian Armenian community, Iranian Zoroastrian, or Iranian Baha'i, or Iranian Muslim community, or just Iranian community, which doesn't really have a society to attach to, or even if they are part of those, they don't attach themselves to that community necessarily. So it becomes different because if you are coming to a community, you automatically are obliged to go with what they're requesting of you. So some of the way that I'm saying it is there a traditional marriage that has come in? So if there was a traditional marriage that has come in into the United States, what happens to them? What I noticed is there's a shift into the culture where they come in and they start looking at the media. So the way that the women are presented in media here are two concepts. They're two different concepts. One, they can be sex objects, and they love to be. One could be the strong female businesswomen and all of the other females who have the strength. So then on both levels, it seems like there's a respect that women have for themselves or as it gets presented. And then what I noticed with the culture that comes in from Iran to the United States is it's reactory where it's needing to be revolutionized, but the revolution is still in a reactory position. So as it comes, it holds as if it acts. You know, we've all heard this, like, fake it till you'll make it. The faking part is there, but the internal part hasn't reached the respect of self, of the body, and the marriage. And women are the ones who are shifting the movement, and men are following the movement. So as the women are going through this duality, men are really getting confused with this. And I see this a lot in our session. So what I'm sensing is, both of them want really the best of both worlds. And that sometimes just doesn't happen. So the women want to have their power, decision-making power, knowing what they can be a part of everything, they want to grow and do all of that. But secretly, they really want to be taken care of by their man financially, and they really want that to happen. So you can hear it in the conversations that happens in the relationship. And men would love not to be fully responsible for all the finances of home and have a partner who also takes care of that. But secretly, they love to be the king of the house and the man of the house, and, you know, for somebody to bring the tea for them and, you know, finally ask them. So these two dualities creates a lot of stuff in the marriage a lot of times. So when women are choosing to work, that choosing allows them to be who they want. But I've heard so many times in a woman's, Iranian woman culture is, my money's mine, and your money's mine. It is. Your money's mine, my money's mine, and I get to spend it however I like. And if you make me give it to you, I'll pretend that I'm okay with it, and I have to do it, but secretly I will resent you. So in the fights, I will tell you that you're not really a man, nor a gentleman, because you're not fully supporting me like you're supposed to do it. And so these are the things that happens in the marriage. They're nuances that come in because we're not integrated yet into a new system. It's not like we sit down, we come together with a conversation, and then we agree upon whether this is a new marriage or traditional marriage and what should be the boundaries. There's some sense that we should be, but it isn't. The women who are forced to work, they have different kinds of resentments because they don't necessarily, they lose respect for their husband because they think that that's not what they signed up for. And after immigration, then what happened is that the money went scarce, or they put their money, the businesses put money in their businesses, and it didn't go well, and now they have to. So because they didn't sign up for this, then they're resentful. I had one client, a couple, who the man came in, the woman was wearing a scarf, they were Muslim, and a little bit of a traditional Muslim. So the man came in and put his money into a business. It went south. They no longer had the money. They had a little child. So the woman started being a cashier in one of the stores. So as she went there, she started feeling empowered. She got money for the first time. She was going to make a decision about how she was going to handle the money. So the man was still the patriarchal system. So the first time they came to my office was because he hit her, and she, for the first time in her life, took a stand in front of him. And then after the third session, she comes in and says, I want to take off my scarf. And he says, over my dead body. So then she says, okay, well, but I want to. So they went through. 5 sessions after we went through this, he says, she says, I want to take off my scarf. He says, over my dead body. She says, that can be arranged. And all that happened within those 5 sessions was that she had the ability to let him know that she could support him now, gain a business. Because our work went into a space that he could have her support him. And in some sense, she got the power. For the first time, he was shocked. But he figured he could allow her to raise her power, be a partner, and actually support him. This is where you see the decision makings and the power begin changing in a whole different way. Men sharing financial the decision making and men sharing the domestic role at home are those things that are starting to change from a traditional way. So the next phenomena are imported mates. What I mean by imported mates? I mean that somebody from the United States starts looking on internet, or their family tells them they've got a good wife, or they got a good husband for them in Iran. And they start looking and creating a relationship, very minimal. They go meet each other 1 week or 2 in Iran or in Dubai, Turkey, somewhere. They supposedly see if they have some sort of a sexual chemistry. And if that sort of a sexual chemistry is there, they go through a fiancé visa, and then they promise, and they'll go through internet for a while until the wife or the husband comes. So what gets created in here is the inability to create. The person who's here usually has either the inability to create a romantic relationship and a sustainable relationship locally, and that's why they need to go all the way to another location to do it, or that they're not necessarily in a location that they have a lot of, like, Persian women, okay? So if they're, for example, in a state that there are not that many Persian Iranian women or men, and they really want to marry, then the pool is very small. So that's what they do. However, what happens is that there's a minimal knowledge, and they don't have a knowledge of people actually being there, watching them, looking at how do they treat everybody else, how do they treat their family system. So the relationship is a made-up relationship only for a couple of hours over the internet. So they both have some sort of a fantasy about marriage. Even if they ask each other, each one of them just supposedly says their fantasy of how they want it to be. Some people have secondary agendas. They want green cards. They just want to get out of the, Iran. There's a lot of secondary agendas that happen. And what happens is that the person who's here just wants a mate. They now want a playmate. They want somebody that comes in and they can create a relationship. The problem is somebody who's just immigrating is just like a little baby. They're just coming to a new culture. They don't know where to drive, how to drive, the language. They don't know anything. So what happens is that the person who's here now has to become a babysitter, and they can't have their mate. The language is very different. The culture of the Iran, especially what I've watched this past 10 years, the culture of communication in Iran is all duality. Like straight talk is not part of our culture. Now before it wasn't, and now it's purposeful. Before it was maybe even with a good intention, now it has other intentionalities in it, right? So for somebody who's been born, raised, or actually came here and has been here for a long time in the United States or the Western world, has gotten more used to straight communication. If you had to work in the corporate world, you've had to learn a little bit of a more straight communication. So now these two languages don't work. Another conversation that is a cultural issue is that Iran's expression of emotions is very high versus the Western world. So when in Iran, men are it's okay to express your anger out loud. For women, it's okay to express your anger and crying and all of that. So the way that the expression happens is dramatic. So if I could just say, the communication among Iranians in Iran is much more dramatic when you come to versus the Western world. So when these two types of communications come together, it creates a lot of issues. So those are the problem that gets created in between these marriages. Most of these marriages go south. Most of them. They end up in my office, and there's a lot to work with them. Especially if it's a woman from here who has some money and goes and finds a husband and brings it, goes south much more. Because it's much more of that kind of dominant female who also needs a man who wants to respect a man who's coming, who just because of immigration is now put in more of a role of a child. So if a woman is nurturing, doesn't have a child, this is cute, they'll take that mothering role. But if they do already have children, or with their first child that is born, their mothering side is being taken care of, this person now is no longer attractive with the way they are. So now we find that we have to grow up the men really quickly before the marriage to be in a space that is balanced. So those are some of the issues that are rising in the imported marriages. They're not stopping, by the way. They're consistently happening for different reasons. The one thing that I didn't hear the conversation at all is rise and normalization of infidelity and extramarital affairs or extramarital relationship. The conversation about extramarital relationship among Iranians right now, it is so normalized, but not normalized like it is normalized in Europe. You know, United States still has a lot of issues with infidelity and extramarital affairs. Europe is much more lenient, which is like, okay, there are open marriages and there's a respect about open marriages. With the matter of Iran as they come in and they talk about the culture, or when they do a visit to Iran and come back, extramarital relationships are a norm, just like everything else in Iran, but under a cover. So everybody knows that everybody's wife with everybody's husbands are all exchanging, going and coming back. And it's even okay for you to go definitely have a relationship with a married man, but nobody should talk about it. And if it's opened up in the marriage, they will be hurt and betrayed. They will go after each other, they will yell at each other, they would, even if they stay in the marriage, they will, at every fight, they will go after each other's throat and put it in front of each other's face. But when you look at it, when I see them individually, it's like this is such a normalized concept that when they go into any type of a family setting, they will get approached. So that's how you know it's normalized. You get approached consistently by married people with married people. So this is very different than the conversation we were having about single group of open sexuality. Open sexuality has come into that. I'm getting a whole group who are coming to my office who are swingers. And there's a huge population of Iranian swingers now that are coming from Iran, coming here, and they're looking now to go connect with the other swingers who are American or European swingers. So this concept of also common knowledge about men sitting together, talking and bragging about sexual acts and going through extramarital affairs is something that is very, very, it's a new phenomenon as far as normalization. And then something else that has happened also is the concept of having the sexual revolution that's happening for females. The females are using sexuality as a PowerPoint. They're using that as a PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint, it's not like they're really respecting themselves, because right after that, every act, every concept, every relationship, there's still shame going on. There is no confidence about this. It isn't like I want to do it, who cares, it's none of your business, I want to do it. But even if it's none of your business, it's a it's a reactory concept. It isn't like I love having sex, and I love having it and doing whatever. So those are the pieces that are very, very new, as I've seen in the past 10 years in my office, which is coming from Iran, and then coming into this space within the immigration and acculturation process. And as it comes into this space, it takes a different role. Because the United States and the Western world, it has an openness, but the openness tries to hold an integrity, and if it's out of integrity, then it comes out. But this culture has an openness which is being out of integrity, and internally the system of emotions has not come in and followed that concept. The other concept that the parenting puts a lot of pressure on the marriage, which is different, is because when you are with the village that you're around, raising a family still has been much easier in Iran with people than when they come in here and try to do this with no support system, and especially when they have 2 or 3 children. Usually marriages after the 2nd or the 3rd child is really becoming pressured and problematic for Iranians, because they want to give all of themselves to the kids. So it puts a lot of pressure on the marriage. And trying to uphold the original cultural values that they've had and they brought from Iran to here, they become problematic with their children, especially with teenagers. Teenagers in the United States have created their own culture, which does not match when you look at the culture that's coming from Iran. But then when they come in and sit in front of me and say, we want to raise our children Iranian, I'm like, what Iranian are you talking about? We have no idea what type of Iranian. Because if you're going to do it with the teenager Iranians that are in Iran, the culture that they're going through is actually safer right now than what's happening in Iran. So you again see the difference in the culture and the problem that everybody's going through into the dualities. So a part of what I was hearing is that as Iran changes and it moves to going through the acculturation here, within the first years, it goes through a lot of problem and ordeal. As they work through these issues and they become more integrated and figure out where they are, then you see marriages either dissolve and each person gets more individuated into the Western society, and then they'll go for their second marriages as more of an individuated person and learn more. Or the marriage itself goes through a revolution where it can find itself where it's supposed to find itself. So thank you for listening.